In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The voice of spirit.
The voice of spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Okay, hi, welcome to the show. I'm very, very pleased to be presenting the voice of spirit. I'll give you a little introduction about myself. I've been a medium and seen spirit since the age of 2, and I have always enjoyed that connection. I've learned so much in all different kinds of ways. So I'm very happy to be here. This is the very first show on Core Radio. And my very first guest is somebody that I've admired for quite some time. It's Dr. Emma Bragdon. And I first got to know her. I think we exchanged emails several years ago. And then I took the book Spiritism and Mental Health, which was published in 2011. And Emma works very closely with mental health and the effects of spirit and mental health together. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Emma. Hi, Emma. How are you?
Hello, Leo. Thank you. I'm well and very pleased to be finally talking with you in person.
Yeah, it's been a long time. We've somehow managed to get the interview together. There were a couple of little stalls here and there, but we're both very busy people, so it's great to talk to you. I know from when we talked briefly before that you've been doing this work for around 35 years. Would that be correct?
I guess it would be, which is pretty awesome to me. I don't think of myself as being even 35 years old, but the calendar definitely confirms that I am. So yes, you're right. I've been doing this work since, well, depends on how you count it, but in a very formal way, I've been doing this work since the early 80s.
Yeah, and again, it is a particular theme of mine. I'm quite well known for speaking out and enlightening people that there is a dark side and that things can go wrong and that we need protection. And sometimes, other organisations just completely blanket and there's no problem or anything. And it's something I've personally been involved with. I tend not to do rescue, but I have sometimes got involved with people that have been affected in this way. And I guess if you're aware and you know you need protection and you can set that up, that saves an awful lot of problems. But these things can sneak up on people that are sensitive but perhaps don't know it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the midst of doing a course right now online, 12 strategies for empaths. And I think the word empath is now being used very loosely to also cover people who are sensitives or naturally born as psychics. And it can be extremely difficult in our culture, in the United States especially, to be born with these kinds of sensitivities and have try to fit in to the culture as it is. Which means human beings in bodies. But then if you're also perceiving other beings that are not in bodies and feeling under the impact of them, there's very little information out there and training so that you can learn how to deal with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that starts on Friday, the 5th of January, doesn't it? And we'll give out some more details about your website and some of the other courses that you do, because there are a number of them, and we'll mention them as we work our way through. Yeah, one of the things I found astounding, there's an organisation you may have heard of called the SNU, National Spiritualist Union, and they don't believe in the dark side at all. So what they basically say is there's nothing there, so you don't need any protection. And that's something that's of great disturbance, really, to me, because they're encouraging people to open up, and these people have, I feel, unless they have natural defences, which some do, they're quite open to it. So they're expanding and they're accepting anything and everything that comes through, and I do find that very sad.
I find that alarming. You said it's the National Spiritualist Union?
Yeah, of Great Britain, and they used to have. Sorry, honey. Sorry, what were you saying, Emma?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, yeah. So they had a good few hundred churches. It's kind of being run down now, but they do talk about being the foremost teaching academy in the world. So they attract people from all over, and I just find it astounding. I've had a few public spats with them in psychic news and because of their attitude, and some of this is just, as you say, alarming. Alarming is the word. Yeah.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear about that. And I don't want to take a negative point of view really on anybody, because this kind of training is so necessary. It's important for people who just want to get their bearings, in that world. And I'm sure that everyone has something positive to contribute. But each one of us as human beings also has blind spots. At least speaking for myself, I can tell you that I definitely have blind spots and rely on other people to help me out in certain situations. So I don't know what their point of view is. I've never gone to their website or studied with them, so I really have no comment that I can make except in response to what you're saying, Leo.
Yeah. I appreciate that. I'll send you some details of this very public spat that I had with them. It ran over about 6 weeks, and it was essentially about protection and other very strange views they hold. So I will send that to you. I do find, I've been teaching for about 25 years on and off myself. And one of the first things I always teach newcomers and reiterate at particular times is that we do need protection, how to invoke that protection, if invoke is the right word, and how to make sure that you are closed. And one of the things that I do is I explain to students that we can image or imagine the chakras as 7 doors or padlocks, or a door and a padlock. And what I get them to do is to clap, and as they clap, imagine that everything shuts down tight, so that they are fully protected. And the reason that I do that is, we all get this sense of walking into a place. It might be a restaurant, it might be a bar, and we think there's something not right there. And it's our awareness that says something is not right. It could be the place, it could be a person. And what I've found, especially people who are developing and are not really aware of this, is they want to kind of reach out to see what it is they don't like, which is very strange to me. And of course, what you do is you're formally inviting whatever that energy might be to step close, because you're reaching out to it. And so I teach them to close down very quickly in this way. And the reason that we use a clap, and it's just a clap, or you can slap your thighs. It's non-intrusive. Nobody knows what you're doing, but it's a mechanical action to follow that mental shutdown. And the reason that we do that is sometimes entities, for want of a better phrase, will interfere with that train of thought of close the crown, close the forehead, and working your way down. Have you found that yourself?
Well, that's a big question. Are you saying, have I found that it's important to protect myself and to teach others about protection? Is that your question?
No, I'm sorry, I didn't explain it very well. It's the fact that if entities are approaching, they will try and distort that train of thought. They will try and confuse you. If you're mentally trying to think of a way to close down, they interfere with that link.
Well, certainly from my experience, there are negative entities that definitely want to intrude and play with people and also get the upper hand. So that doesn't mean all entities do that, but certainly some entities that are not positively motivated. In other words, they're not interested in really empowering people.
Yeah, exactly.
They will be very intrusive, and so it's extremely important to acknowledge that at the very beginning of training around opening up to beings that are not in bodies. So I'm in complete alignment with you about that, Leo. And as you know, I've been a student of Spiritism, which is a approach to spiritualism that has been really cultivated in Brazil and gotten very popular in Brazil over the last about 150 years. And they have it as a cornerstone of their thinking as well, that it's really important to be extremely discerning when you're opening up on a spiritual level. You need to know exactly who you want to address and also who you don't want to open up to and have an effective way of, as you use the metaphor, closing the doors so that the negative entities can't impact you.
Absolutely. I was fortunate when I was very young. I saw my first spirit at the age of 2, and it wasn't any surprise to me. I just took it as something very natural, which in essence it is. But I was also fortunate as I began to get older, but still very much a child, I think really up until the age of about 13 or so, to have had my guides allow me some interaction with entities that were definitely negative, and it was done by them in a very controlled way. So I've been very blessed to have had a wide number of experiences on all levels, but certainly those impinging on the dark side. And one thing that I learned was that they can be extremely subtle. People sometimes talk about Ouija board, and you get the board out and bang, and it's instant, and there's a reaction. I found in my experience it's not like that. I found that they talk to you in a way that maybe mimics your thoughts. And again, it's all very subtle, and they'll take that so far, and then they'll start to intrude on their thoughts and their way of thinking gradually. And by the time that you think, something's not right, I found they may have been with you 5 or 10 years. People have this image of it, like in the films, it's instant. Something happens, bang, there they go, and that's it. So what are your feelings on that, Emma?
Well, as you're talking about that, Leo, I'm thinking about a client that I've had recently, an extremely intelligent, sensitive man who is in his 30s. And he actually was a teacher of meditation for others, and he did chakra work with others as a healer, and was very deeply engaged in his very positive healing work. And what he came to a point where he was listening to guidance from his spirit, who he called his spirit guides, every second. So with around his thinking, around his action, all the time he was listening for guidance. And that can be a wonderful thing if your guides are coming from a very high place. But he reached a point quite recently where he said, my guides were telling me to hurt myself or hurt someone else. And he had developed a lifestyle, literally, a habit of always listening for guidance and always doing what he was told. And he didn't know anything different, except he was observant enough to realize, wait a minute, something's gone wrong. I'm getting messages that are negative, but he hadn't developed the discernment to recognize who was who on the other side. In other words, in the realm of the spirit beings. So he was really at a loss and extremely scared, extremely anxious. And he even checked himself into a psych ward because he felt that he needed that safety and security that would come from even a conventional psych ward.
Yeah. Again, I can believe it. And it's good that he was aware enough to understand something not right there. I dealt with a gentleman, two sisters and a mum called me because their brother was having a lot of problems. And he was actually very religious. And he went to a spiritualist church, which I know to have problems, and he was an entity connected to him at that point. And the terrible thing for me was that they were using his religion to attack him, and there were 4 or 5 entities that were there, and they were basically telling him that one of them was Jesus, and he'd greatly offended him and was going to, cast him out and all this kind of thing. So they use your knowledge and experience against you. And when I went to see him, I began to clear the house and eventually went to the room. He'd actually been standing in this room without eating or drinking for 4 days. And as I began to clear the room, I could see what was happening around him. And he started to become very, very agitated. And cut a long story short, this guide or this entity that called itself Jesus began to physically burn him, and I could see red welts coming up on the arms. And he told him that he'd been greatly offended, he was going to burn in hell, all that kind of thing. So it's interesting that whichever way your mind thinks, whatever you attach importance to, they'll use that to manipulate you. It has got a happy ending, actually. Eventually we had to call the police and the ambulance, and it took 6 men to hold him down, and he was taken to a psych ward. He was there about 6 months, and he made whatever they were using, he made a complete recovery. And the astounding thing was that he remembered everything. What I was trying to do, what was happening to him. And I did say he should write it down, but he declined to do that, bless him. But I think this is something that people don't understand, that they'll use your weaknesses in that way. It can be quite disturbing.
Absolutely. It can be very disturbing. And I have people call me quite frequently, and they say, can you please give me either a referral or help me, because I feel like there are negative entities attached to me and I don't know what to do about it, and I'm really feeling victimized by them. So this can be a very big problem. And some people, of course, who are in that situation also have other psychological issues that may be left over from childhood they haven't taken care of. So the issue of the attachment becomes really compounded and can become quite complex.
Yeah, again, that they find that little chink in the armor, and they exploit that. Now we've talked about entities, and we'll talk about them a little more in the after the break. But people imagine that whatever comes close is human, and that for some reason they seem to assume that, you know, it's within living memory. So these humans have passed over, you know, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, something like that. But not all the entities are or ever have been human. And personally, I don't know whether you agree, that's where we get our ideas of demons and how they look. What do you think of that, Emma?
Well, I agree with you that not all of the entities that we may come in contact with have been human in the past. I totally agree with that. And that people through the ages have tried to put a face on them to make them possibly less scary or more manageable. I don't know. I mean, you look at some of the gargoyles on the churches in Europe, and they don't look very warm and fuzzy to me.
No, that's right. I mean, again, they were there to kind of scare off evil spirits, and, you know, so there are various kind of connotations with it. But without wanting to frighten people too much, angels have never been human. So it's not all entirely bad. I mean, there's a whole realm of entities there that have different roles, and they're not all bad. But people seem to assume that, you know, they've passed recently. And what I try to get through to people is sometimes these entities, whether they're earthbound or not, are sometimes thousands of years old, and they have thousands of years of experience of fooling people. You know, we have this strange idea, don't we, that, oh, you know, this guy died in the war and he's earthbound, and that it's not all that it seems.
Yeah. So, you know, one of the things that we haven't spoken about, Leo, and maybe we should speak about it after the break because of our timing, but people ask me quite a bit, well, how can I protect myself so that I don't have these invasive spirits around me? And I think there's some pretty simple answers to it, but they're answers that not everyone feels completely comfortable with. But go ahead.
I was just going to say absolutely.
So one of the things that seems most important to me is that people know that if they fill themselves up with the vibration of God and with their personal connection with the highest being there is, whatever it is for them, whatever they call it, but it represents love and wisdom. If they fill themselves up with that energy and connect with it, there are no negative entities that can come to them, either to frighten them or to do them harm in any way. And that's a very simple thing that everyone can remember and actually do.
Fantastic. We're just going to go into the break.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo. After these brief words from our sponsors.
The Fenton Files, where it's all connected.
You see, whoever controls technology controls the world.
Come explore a universe full of possibilities. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. The Fenton Files. Go where no other show has gone before.
You can deny all the things I've seen, all the things I've discovered, but not for much longer. Because too many others know what's happening out there.
Whether it be UFOs, aliens, conspiracies, or even consciousness, your host, Lorian Fenton, has a file for that. The Fenton File. Your journey to the truth is but a file away. Live, Monday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The Fenton Files.
Incredibly intense.
Where truth is just waiting to be discovered.
Dear John, uncontrolled high blood pressure is serious, and I can quit whenever I want. But when I quit, you quit. Sincerely, your heart.
To get your high blood pressure to a healthy range, visit heart.org/blood pressure. A message from the American Heart Association and the Ad Council.
Paranormal, somewhere between abnormal and paranormal.
The U.S. military holds the ability to time travel.
Jeremy Scott asks the questions that we're all dying to know.
Wow, that's a remarkable question.
Watch your step. Hide under your blankets.
The show that is going to make you think.
Prepare yourself for what you're about to hear.
This transmission is coming to you.
You're riding into the Paranormal.
Live Saturday night, 6 to 9 on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Listen up, everyone.
This is the world-famous KCOR.
That's the only station I listen
to. If ever a breed was affectionate to a fault, it's the Golden Retriever. They're people dogs, pure and simple. And the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada needs your help. If you would like to volunteer, foster, adopt, or donate, go to the Golden Retriever Rescue of Southern Nevada's website at grrsn.org. That's grrsn.org. Or call 598-GOLD. That's 598-GOLD.
What if maintaining a healthy weight was as simple as drinking a cup of coffee? With Valentis Coffee, it's that easy. Harvested from the world's most pristine coffee farms and packed with the purest ingredients on earth, Valentis takes losing weight to a completely new level. At Valentis, we believe everyone deserves a chance to be healthy and fit. It's pure, natural, healthy, and delicious. Click the Valentis Healthiest Coffee banner on the KCOR Digital Radio Network website and take the Weight Loss Guarantee Challenge. Valentis Coffee, simply the world's healthiest coffee.
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, and welcome back. And I'm talking to Dr. Emma Bragdon, a PhD, who's devoted her life to this work of spiritism and mental health, which I feel is a very, very great problem in the world. Welcome back, Emma.
Thank you so much, Leo. Appreciate that.
Oh, sorry, Emma, I missed that slightly.
So thank you for your welcome back. And I wasn't sure if you wanted me to make a comment about the caller in.
Yes, please. Yeah, this is from Emma G, isn't it?
Okay, yes. Yeah, I'm happy to read that out and comment about it if you'd like. So Emma G says, I'm living this path. I'm so very sensitive. I became saturated with others' energy. Anxiety, panic attacks, and PTSD, which means post-traumatic stress syndrome. I gave up work, she says, 14 years teaching health at a university. I am healer, and during that dark time, heard I'm having the dark night of the soul, and I had to face my showdown. I had always worked in the light, but I had to acknowledge my darkness too. This happened last November when Neptune was conjunct my natal moon in Pisces. So I don't read a specific question, at least literally, in her sending this message in, but it does seem to me that she's talking about an issue that can happen for people who don't get sufficient training in terms of working with their sensitivities. And that's not to say that Emma G is in any ways deficient. It's just to say that it's very difficult to get training, and not only just training, but the depth of training we sometimes need. So it comes to me, Emma, if I can speak to you directly, I don't know you, obviously, but I have read stories similar to this and spoken to people who have stories similar to this. And one of the things that can happen is people can be very sensitive, in fact, be picking up on highly intelligent, highly wise, highly loving beings, and through that be a real healing force in other people's lives. And those very same people can come to a point in their life where suddenly they become aware of difficulties that they've had either from childhood or possibly even from past lifetimes. And it's as if that, I'll just call it stuff, not to demean it, but just to call it a name, that stuff comes up basically to be cleared. And so the person having this experience of panic attacks or anxiety or PTSD has to not only deal with getting sufficient training in keeping the negative entities at bay, but they also have to generally find someone to work with, either a peer or a psychotherapist, who can help them clear whatever it is that's coming up from their deep, dark past. Not to say that they're bad in any way, but all of us are in this classroom called life on Earth. And we've been through various ups and downs, and sometimes we've been less than perfect or less than compassionate. So we're in a process of learning how to become more compassionate and wise. And sometimes we have to go back into those dark pockets and reveal what's there to ourselves and clear that energy and balance ourselves with new knowledge about who we are, what our capacities in the dark are, as well as the light, and set the course straight so that we are basically promising to ourselves that we are going to be acting in a more compassionate and wise way in the future. So easier said than done, though. I can say what I just said in a couple of minutes, but to actually walk that talk can take, days, months, even years before we gain the skill that we need as people who are sensitive, and also gain the support that we need to work through the kind of purification that is necessary. So I think a lot of people, who believe in the powers of the other side and are sensitives and can make a connection, sometimes think that, it's going to be, peaches and cream and roses because I have this connection. And yet there's a great responsibility that comes with the connection for us to be very self-aware and attentive to things that may come up from our dark side, and also gain the skills and the support to work with that material as it comes up.
Absolutely, and again, we all have balance. Earth or life is a place of learning. It is a place of testing, and it is sometimes purification by fire. I think something that not many people may be aware of is as you begin to develop as a medium, you'll suddenly get stages where blockages will rise up and need to be purged. And sometimes they can be very pleasant and it's just a release of something. Other times it can be quite emotional and physically painful when these blockages. It's a bit like a champagne cork, the pressure builds up and it has to go. So it's always a good thing when it does go. But if you're not really aware, you can have some quite startling experiences like that. Now, I've never been afraid of passing. From being born, I had a real sense of not wanting to be here and knowing that I'd come from somewhere else. And so that's never been a problem for me. And I've faced death in different ways at different times in my life. But when I was training, I had a flashback one morning over about 15 minutes of 6 past lives where I had been murdered. And it was not really to get rid of that fear of passing, because I've never had that, but it was just a kind of reinforcing of this is what it's like to pass, because people, it's mainly religion instigated. There's this great fear of passing, that it's going to be painful. Now, the body, of course, will react, but passing itself, that moment when you pass, there is no pain. There's absolute release. But religions sort of work up, that this is going to happen, that's going to happen. If you're not being pure, you're going to. I was kind of brought up as a Catholic, but you're going to go to hell, you're going to go to limbo, and there's all these kinds of images for you to toe the line in whatever religion you may have chosen. So for me to have faced death the first time, really, when I was 8, the point of releasing these blockages wasn't to say, well, there's a fear and that has to be released. It was just like, this is what it was like to pass. And so I agree entirely with what you're saying. We get to a level, not always when we're developing, but certainly when we're sensitive, when these purges come up.
Yeah, I like the way you spoke about that. And it can be light and even celebratory, like passing over. Doesn't have to be dark and doesn't have to take a long time of being in the trenches in the dark, working with personal issues. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this is a subject that comes up sometimes during readings or when I'm doing workshops and that. And the image that my guide gave me was of somebody that was drowning. And when we're about to pass over, we are physically released from the body. So it's like watching a film. We're not emotionally connected to what's happening, we're just observing it, but of course the body will react, it will thrash, it will grasp for air, but we're not physically there. And I feel that's a great example that my guide gave me of it's fine, it's okay. Another example that my guide gave me when I was doing a reading for a lady, I don't remember readings at all, except if there's something for me to learn or my students to learn, then I the memory's there. And a lady was asking about passing, and my guide said to her directly something very close to, my child, why are you afeard of passing? You were not afeard of being born, and you are simply passing back through a door through which you entered, which I think is a wonderful way. I felt the energy from her just clear straight away, because we have lived many times. People think this is a one and only life. Well, this existence perhaps, but it's not. Energy can't be destroyed.
Right. Good thing to remember, isn't it? We've probably been here many times before, and people who choose to do some hypnotherapy with a professional therapist who can actually lead them into the interlife between lifetimes, so that they become aware of what that's like. Oftentimes, report dropping their fear of death because they fully experience on a really deep level that there's nothing to fear in between lives. In fact, it can be an ecstatic experience.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We've got a message here from Kevin from Arizona, and he says, "I'm a paranormal investigator, and I heard another show on Core talk about cleansing your equipment after doing an investigation to stop something coming home with you. What's your thoughts on this?" Well, yes, they can attach themselves to you. They can, in a sense, follow you home. So they're just following. There's no connection. But of course, everything is made of energy. And this is why we can do psychometry and read articles of whatever it may be, anything really. So, Kevin, if you feel that you need to cleanse the equipment, then I certainly would. But I think if you're alert enough and aware enough if something approaches, because again, it's a basic instinct that something doesn't feel right, then I would be more concerned with making sure that you are okay. If you want to cleanse equipment, I would do it. I've not found that necessary personally. Have you, Emma, dealt with anything where it's been connected to an object, for example?
Yes, I have. I had the experience of being around a very powerful medium and then learning something about this person that was pretty dark. And so I cut off my relationships with the person and went back to my home in Vermont. And so I was never intimate with this person, but they were someone that I had been learning from. So at a certain point, I was aware that this person's voice was coming through my computer.
Yeah.
And literally, the first time it happened, I thought, wait a minute, how could that be? I hear his voice very, very clearly, and there's no doubt in my mind who that is. And I went through in my mind, like, how could that voice possibly be coming through my computer? And there was no recording that I'd made of the kind that was coming through. So it made no sense to me, except to, it was kind of an alert that this person had a particular power and wanted to scare me. And it happened actually 3 times, at not close together, like within months. And each time I got the same message that this person wanted to frighten me. And by the 3rd time it happened, I had galvanized in myself a sense of, this person is being invasive. I want nothing to do with him. And I was extremely clear, not only in my voice, but also in my energy, that he had no place in my home or in anything that was part of me, like my computer equipment.
Yeah.
So it's clear to me that they can come through computer. And I also have a dear friend who has been a student of this kind of activity. And she actually was connected in a very positive way to the head of her organization, who said to her, well, when I pass on, I'll come to you all through your TV. And I'll come at a certain point on the same day that I've died. And so there were a handful of people in that group, let's say 6. And on the very day that this person passed, at the time that she had appointed before her passing, that she would return, they all turned on their TVs, and they were in a large metropolitan area where they usually get very good reception. And each one of them saw snow on their TV with the outline of this person who had just passed. So, it's very clear to me that there can, our instruments, electronics, can actually be transmission stations.
Absolutely. There's a wonderful medium in Italy who, shamefully, I can't remember his name, but he's a particular type of medium, and he works with a radio, and this is an old valve radio, and he takes it to church, and people come through the radio and give messages to their loved ones. And he was taken to a Radio Shack, which, as you probably know, cuts off all radio waves, so nothing can get in. And the scientists were there. The voices came, so they unplugged it. The voices came. They took all the valves out. The voices came. And, so they were literally at that point using the speaker. A lot of this energy is electromagnetic energy, so they can affect electrics a lot. And I feel that you've had the same kind of experience as well. Lots of mediums, we have trouble with computers, electrical devices. They kind of stop working or, will just play up. So the fact that they use those electronic instruments, I find fascinating. We're going to talk in a moment something that LEB has mentioned, but I want to go back to your institute, the IMHU. At the moment, you've got 30 online courses, and there are books that you do. So there are courses here that interested people as well as professionals can join. And again, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. Can you tell us a little more about some of these courses?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to describe a little bit about the background, which is that I did spend about 11 years, 6 months out of each year, in Brazil studying Spiritism, which, as I mentioned before, is a branch of Spiritualism. And I was not only studying it as a scholar, but I was also considered to be a highly trained medium myself. So I was able to participate. And as a result of getting to know the community centers that were Spiritist, as well as the Spiritist psychiatric hospitals, I gained a tremendous amount of insight into a way of working with mental health issues that was very different than what we have in the United States, because it included things like being aware that some people are sensitives and need to develop skills in order to live with their sensitivities in a way where they don't just absorb and become saturated with others' energies, but can really use their sensitivity as a skill. And I saw sensitives in Brazil who were very, very gifted with medical intuition. Yep. And were working within the hospitals. I saw sensitives who were highly trained in doing depossession or disobsession work. And I met several people who'd been diagnosed as schizophrenics who were now fully operational in society. For instance, going from being a dysfunctional schizophrenic to being a university professor in physics. Fantastic. So it made that kind of transition, as well as staying very involved with their own gifts as sensitives. So I think it led me to believe that many people who are diagnosed as schizophrenics are actually untrained mediums or untrained sensitives who are just overwhelmed with the kinds of energies they're experiencing and don't run into anyone who can help them sort it out. So anyway, in 2012, I started thinking, well, how can I bring some of what I've learned in Brazil? How can I bring it back to the United States? And in what kind of a venue can I make this information available to people? And I wanted to, have a voice in the conversation about upgrading and improving the mental health care system that we have in the United States. So I started this organization called Integrative Mental Health for You. And right at this point, we have 30 courses, and we give a certification program to train people to become spiritual emergence coaches so they can assist people who are struggling with intense spiritual experiences and wanting to completely integrate their spirituality and continue to grow in a very healthy and balanced way. So, yes, we have about 30 courses.
I think that's great because, one of the classic descriptions of a schizophrenic is somebody that hears voices, which is also a classic description of a medium. The only difference being that they hear bad and negative voices, and we mostly tend to hear good. But I'd like to pick up on a point you mentioned about this medium that was very intrusive, and that people feel that because a person is a so-called spiritualist. I wouldn't class myself as a spiritual person, as a spiritualist at all. I would hope I'm a spiritual person, but they think that everyone that does this work is good, is with the light, and that's very much not the case. Unfortunately, in spiritualism as a recognized religion, there are so many people that have egos, that are backstabbers, all kinds of things going on. So it's people have this image that people who work in this profession are holier than thou, and that they're not at all. So it's quite a shock, I think, when they join it thinking it's all light and fluffy, and they find out there's a lot of egos out there. And so what you've said about that doesn't surprise me at all. You're also running a course on how to effectively support someone in spiritual emergency, and that starts on January the 18th. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We've got probably about a minute to go for the break, so we'll just drift into the break. But I'd like to talk to you about that, because again, that's something that's very important. So we'll just go into the break, and we'll be right back after this.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.
In the deep recesses of one's mind, there is a voice, a guiding light through the darkness, a connection to the other side.
You're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just poor little me.
A pathway to spiritual that echoes with enlightenment. The Voice of Spirit.
The Voice of Spirit.
You are a function of this total galaxy, bounded by the Milky Way, and that furthermore, this galaxy is a function of all other galaxies.
Your journey starts here and now. With your host and connection to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Well, welcome back to the third half, if we can put it that way. I'm talking to Dr. Emma Bragdon. She is very interested in spiritism and mental health and all those associations with it. She runs lots of courses. There are 30 online courses available through imhu.org. But if you want to go and look at her site, it's Emma Bragdon, EMMABRAGDON.com, and you can look through that and some of her books that she's written. Again, a big favourite of mine is Spiritism and Mental Health. There's another called Resources for Extraordinary Healing. That's another wonderful book. The Call of Spiritual Emergency, and the newest DSM, which is Deliberately Seeking Mental Health. So welcome back, Emma, again.
Thank you very much, Leo. Pleasure to be here.
It's lovely. It's lovely to have you here. I know that you do a lot of good work, and one of the things that we had discussed, I think it was in the break before the show started, was that you voiced some surprise that there are some organisations that just don't believe in the dark side, and by organisations I mean so-called spiritual organisations. And we both find that quite appalling and destructive, because one of the primary things is to make sure that people are safe. And so being a great admirer of your work and the importance of that, it's something that I feel should be taught from day one. And maybe even gently brought into schools. I've got a friend that is working with the government, and she's working on they call it wellness, but introducing the subject very gently to school children. And I think if we can become more aware from an early age, or that awareness at early age encouraged, we could save a lot of the mental anguish that's in the world.
I agree with you completely. Leah, one of the things that I've been very involved with since 1980 is a concept called spiritual emergency. And some people don't like that word at all. They have their own reasons for it. Either they don't like the word spiritual, or they don't like the word emergency. But if you think about someone who is just kind of minding their own business, and suddenly they run into a very unusual experience. For instance, Eben Alexander, a neuroscientist and neurosurgeon, never believed that there was something called a valid near-death experience, where someone would actually experience traveling on the other side or speaking with beings on the other side. He always, if one of his patients came out of anesthesia after brain surgery and said, "I had a near-death experience, let me tell you about it," he'd just kind of shake his head and nod, and then tried to politely leave the room. Well, he had a near-death experience that lasted almost a week, when he was in a coma, and he literally flatlined, showing no brain activity in the latter part of the week. But he came out of the experience and regained full consciousness awareness, including all of his knowledge as a neuroscientist and a brain surgeon. And he was able to tell the tale of what he experienced on the other side. Well, that completely rearranged his value system and also his perception of what's real and what isn't real. And he took some time out to sort himself out and to figure out what he was going to do next with his life. Well, in my way of thinking, he was going through a spiritual emergency, meaning he had a big spiritual experience, and he had no orientation to make sense of it. In fact, he believed it could never exist, and then all of a sudden it did exist. And he needed to take time out to sort out what was important for him now, sort out his values, and to sort out really if he wanted to continue doing what he had been doing or something else. And in his case, he decided to spend a good deal of time helping people reach higher states of consciousness so they could have an experience similar to his without having to be close to death. So he's working with sound healing and other forms of expanding consciousness. But that has been a real cornerstone in my work, is identifying what a spiritual emergency is, and then assisting people who are going through it to get the kind of support they need so they can become oriented, get kind of a framework for what's happened, and then kind of come down to earth in a new place with a new value system and actually functioning at a higher level. So a lot of my work still is in that domain, because I lead a training program for people to become certified as a spiritual emergence coach, which actually is a person, as I see it, who can help someone as they're having intense spiritual experiences to awaken in a more safe way that doesn't necessarily need to involve a crisis or an emergency, but also help those people who have had an emergency to realize that they just need a new framework for what's real and what isn't real, and take some time out to decide what's important for them to do in this life. So forgive me for standing on my soapbox for a moment there, but that's I'm very, very oriented towards that. And I think that's one of my gifts in the world right now, is to be a person who is not only speaking about this, but also training people to work with others. Because I think under the stresses of the world today, actually many people are being catapulted into a kind of spiritual crisis. Because
absolutely. Sorry.
When we do have these dark experiences, for instance, contemplating the suicide on planet Earth for the planet itself, when we are thrust into these kinds of stressful thoughts, then the mind can also take us into some extremely positive highs. And for instance, communication with God or communication with angels can become more open to people during this time. And my own sense, and of course I have no measurement for this, but my own sense is that there are many, many people who are having spiritual emergencies these days who need support so that they can just learn the lessons that are in that process and then begin to function at a higher level. But it usually takes support. In other words, talking to other people who've been through the experience, feeling like you're not the only one, and feeling like it's really okay to explore these new territories that we may have actually been taught a long time ago were not okay to explore. So.
Absolutely. And there are more and more people having near-death experiences, and I don't believe in coincidences at all. I think I know that spirit are quite frustrated with us. We mentally have not really moved on much since 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. As a species, it's it's a little bit like the situation with Trump at the moment. I don't like you, I'm going to bomb you, and this is the kind of mentality we've still got. So I know that spirit are speeding things up, and one of the indications of that was 2012. Which I'll talk about in a moment. But more and more people are having these experiences. And the wonderful thing is more and more people are talking to each other about it. It's not taboo anymore. I know that if 20, 30 years ago, I walked into my doctors and said, look, I hear voices. You can see him reaching for the button to call the ambulance. It would have been a normal thing to do because, again, you're hearing voices. That's not good. But to give a short example of that, where I used to live, I went into the doctor's surgery and this lady said, I know you. And my face is quite well known. So I thought, oh, okay. And she said, you're a medium at the church. And I thought, oh, here we go. And she said, I'm a Reiki master. And so is this lady here. So there's it's nice that all this is coming out. It leads us nicely onto LEB. And she says, I like to think my family on the other side would protect me from nasty entities, but wouldn't want them have to make too hard. Ellie, there is this myth that whilst they love us, and if they can protect us in a small way, they will. But there is this myth that we only have to ask spirit or God or whatever name you wish to give it, and they'll save us from this, that, and the other. They can't. And the reason they can't is that we choose a life, we choose experiences, what we're going to do when we come here. Now, that's not to say that you will definitely have nasty entities. They will sometimes warn you. Your own instincts will warn you. But the best thing that you can do, as Emma and I have discussed this evening, is to become aware, get some training, and know that you can protect yourself. So it's yes, of course they love us. Yes, of course they want the best for us. But what we often forget here is that what we as a spirit would choose and what we as a human would choose are sometimes opposite ends of the scale. And one of the examples that I give of that is who in their right mind, in a human way, would want to pick a life of starvation and deprivation in Africa? You know, we think, really? Why? But as a spirit, we know that there are valuable lessons in that. So spirit have a very different way of looking at things. We do while we're there, and we think, you know, Africa, hardship, that's good for me. That is literally good for the soul, and we incarnate there. So don't be afraid, Ellie B, of what's there. As you're listening to this, hopefully you'll understand, and you can go to Emma's site and maybe take some of those courses and understand that we have physical control. It's when we give that control away that the problems start. And one of those classic example, I don't know if you agree, Emma, classic example is the Ouija board. And what we tend to say is anybody there? And really, it's an open invitation to anything and everything just to come forward. If you imagine the Crown Chakra and see that as a torch in the dark, it can be seen for many, many, many miles. It is that obvious. And entities will become attracted to it. Some need help. Some feign help, of course, but they're attracted to it. And if we say, is anybody there? What we're basically saying is anything and everything make contact. It's a bad thing. So we can be tricked very much into giving away our power. And just as I explained before, you know, some of these entities are thousands of years old. They have thousands of years of experience of tricking people. So if we hold our power and we're aware and we can close and we can protect, there's not anything really that can harm us. It's when we're tricked into giving it away. A bit like a con man. If you think of them as con men, Ellie, and they're just there to kind of gain entry one way or another, then that's a good way to look at it. Okay. We've got something. I don't know if you can see that, Emma. We've got Troy from Texas, and he says, all these ghost shows, not going to mention names, call everything demonic. You were saying there are some negative energies. Can you explain the difference between being demonic or just a spirit from a past relative? What do you think of that, Emma?
Interesting. I'm not aware of all the ghost shows that he's referring to, but again, I don't listen to the radio so much, and maybe this is something that he's tuning into because he's interested in it. Yeah. But I try to keep things really simple in my life, and one of the things that I said earlier in the show, I'm going to reiterate again because it might be useful for LAB as well as for Troy, which is that yes, there is the spirit realm that exists, and yes, they can be in communication with us, and yes, there are ignorant and lost souls on the other side, and there are also extremely loving, compassionate, wise beings on the other side, just like there are on the street in human beings. The full spectrum is there on the spirit side and on the human side, full spectrum. So I don't believe that everything is demonic by any means. And I believe that it's of enormous value for us to tune into those beings that can guide us and help us. Some people might call that Jesus Christ. some people might call that their own spirit guide, who is clearly shown that it is singularly loving and wise. And other people will call it Kuan Yin. I mean, there are many, many names. And for me, it doesn't make that much difference what the name is. But what's most important is that if we are thinking about dealing with the spirit realm, or if we're called in some way to deal with it because it begins to happen spontaneously, it's extremely important to be discerning and not to be just open to any old person that walks on the street, and also not be open to just any old spirit that's in the spirit realm. So I think that's extremely important, Troy. And one of the things I've gotten from Leo today is that he feels that it's extremely important to be discerning, because there are some negative spirits. And just like, you know, we probably all have mothers who at one point said, don't talk to strangers on the street. It doesn't mean that everybody's mean, but some people do not have your best interests in mind. So it's the same kind of basic truth here. So, yes, I think Leo and I are both saying that there are some negative energies. And yes, there's a difference between something being demonic and other kinds of energies. So I wouldn't say that it's either demonic or a spirit from a past relative. There are many, many spirits that you may have not had any kind of relationship to in any of your past, however you think of your past. So there are beings on the other side that are angelic. There are beings on the other side that one may call demonic. There are beings that are like they're tricksters that are just kind of enjoy playing with people. There are many, many beings on the other side that have been have stepped up to the plate and said, I want to help people in the human realm. And they're doing their assignment as best they can of making themselves available to help people who are in the human realm. So I don't think it can, as much as I like to reduce things to simplicity, the idea of reducing the kinds of spirits on the spirit realm to two different spirits is, I think, impossible for us to do, unless we say, you know, some tend to be really good and some tend to be not so good. That might do it. But there are many, many spirits that may want to interact with us that have not been a relative in the past. So I think that's important. And the message that I'd like to continue to repeat is that if people are feeling at all frightened, or that they don't want to be interacting with spirits, or they want to be especially clear that they're only interacting with the highest spirits, meaning the most loving, the most compassionate, and the most wise, then all of those things can be satisfied by just simply creating a strong communion with God, or whatever you believe is God, the Creator. And to the extent that you can strengthen that deep communion, you will be completely protected and unable to be hurt by any of these entities that may have negative intention. So that's the bottom line. None of us can be impacted negatively if we have developed that kind of communion, and if we remember to continue on with that communion. It's not just a one-shot deal. Oh yeah, I did it 15 years ago. It's something to be practiced every single day. And in fact, practicing the presence of God within yourself may be something to do every single second. So I'm not giving you that assignment, but I'm saying that that's a possibility. And the more we align ourselves with that highest vibration, or that highest energy, that highest God force, the more we're completely immune to the negativity that can come through the spirit realm.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Would
you agree?
I would absolutely agree. This was one of the arguments that I put to the SNU, the Spiritualist Nationalist Union, because I said, look, there are all kinds of people roaming the earth here, some very unpleasant. They don't, and we don't change immediately we get over. We are there's a spiritual law called like attracts like, and so we create a place, but we're also drawn to a place that's like us. Now, in essence, there is no hell at all. However, if you imagine that you were a murderer and torturer, and if you imagine a world like this, then you would find yourself in a plane, a sphere, or a world where there are 7.5 billion murderers and torturers. And because we can't die, we're quite willing to rip people apart and that. So that's a world that we've created for ourselves. And that's what happens. And so, whatever kind of people we've got wandering the earth, and there are some terrible people, they don't change when we get over. So I think it's right what you say, and we have to think of them as conmen. They're going to say and do whatever they can to gain a bit of confidence, and all they need literally is a few seconds, and that's it. There are also things called false guides, which we'll talk about after the break. We're going to go into a break now. And false guides are something that most people are not aware of. So, again, con men of the spirit kind. So we're going to the break, and we'll be back straight after this.
This is the voice of spirit, your connection to the other side.
To understand something spiritually, you must experience it. And in order to experience it, you have to experience it in your imagination.
Explore with us by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
Everything that now exists was once imagined. Therefore, everything that is going to exist must first be imagined.
Back with your guide to spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Leo Bonomo.
After these brief words from our sponsors. Within the ethers of reality, there sits a bridge, a hot spot between what we see and what we don't see.
Testing, can you hear me?
Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, join Becky Vickers on Bridging the Paranormal as she interviews paranormal investigators from around the world and explores how the shadows of the past meet the present.
Let's begin.
Bridging the Paranormal will take you to some of the most haunted places in the world in search of proof that the dead still walk among us.
I see dead people.
Becky Vickers' Southern charm will have you believing in the unbelievable.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Live Tuesday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific and 8 p.m. Eastern, Bridging the Paranormal.
Bridging the Paranormal.
Hosted by Becky Vickers. Paranormal talk about the dark side, but with a lighter side touch. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. It's time to believe. Believe in the unbelievable.
There's a show that's not afraid to ask questions no one else will ask. Not afraid to say
what no one else will say.
Friday nights at 7 p.m. Listen to Restricted Airspace with Tina Marie, where no topic is off limits. Conspiracy theories, paranormal activities, hoaxes, the unexplained. It's what we talk about. Question everything. Trust no one. Restricted Airspace with Tina Marie. Friday at 7 p.m. on the KCOR Digital Radio Network out of Las Vegas, Nevada.
That's good. Good.
Turn your radio up.
I love it. All the music I want to hear.
This is my station.
Each week, join Patrick Phillips as he takes you inside Hollywood. In-depth celebrity interviews, the very latest entertainment news, and more. Patrick Phillips hosts Pop Culture Tonight.
Join me Thursdays at 1 p.m.
right here on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific. Jump onto the Celestial Highway and travel at the speed of light into hyperspace. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. She navigates you through the cosmic tides of mysticism into the world of covert technology, UFOs, mystical sciences, and the world of unforeseen forces.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Listen live, Friday night, 9 p.m. Pacific.
For Hyperspace.
The one show that blows the whistle off our government black ops projects. Hyperspace. Hosted by Solaris Blue Raven. Exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Want to take a ride?
Welcome back to the Voice of Spirit, your connection to the other side.
There's no accidents in this universe. We all show up here with a purpose. There's an intelligence that is a part of everything and everyone, and all of us are connected to it.
Connect with us on Twitter by using hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us live in our chat room at kcorradio.com. To get a free reading during the show, call 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Give us a call now.
Worldwide callers, use Skype name KCOR Radio. And now, inspirational clairvoyant medium, psychic, and your connection to the spirit, the host of the Voice of Spirit, Leo Bonomo.
Hi, welcome back. We've had a few questions about spirit. We've talked about what it's like to pass over. I used to do, I still do at times, automatic writing. And if you're not aware what that is, it's when spirit will physically take over and write whatever they need to write. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is I keep getting told off by my publisher, say, like, it's your book. The way that I view it is I just happen to be there. I happen to be holding the pen. That's it. And what would happen is they would wake me up at night and I'd get a few verses in my head. And I learned by experience, if I'm not going to start writing, I'm going to be up all night. So I would start to write and I would physically pass out. I would physically be unconscious and spirit would move the pen. Sometimes it would be a few phrases, a couple of paragraphs. Other times it would be pages of A4. And what resulted from that is a spiritual book. It's written as a novel. It's the first time I believe that Spirit have written a spiritual book as a novel. It's called Summerland, and that refers to the sphere that 99% of us will go to. Summerland, heaven, whatever name you want to give it. And it's about a little boy just prior to and his passing. What he experiences there, how you progress in spirit, some of the different spheres, and it is a little bit dark in places, just to show that there are places like that. But it talks about all kinds of things. One of the reasons for cot deaths, how mediumship from spirit world is seen and how they're communicated, and some of the dangers of the Ouija board. So if you are interested in that book, it's called Summerland. You can order it on Amazon. You can request it from my site as well if that's what you want to do. It took roughly 3 years, or it was over 3 years, but it took about 3 months to write. It was physically written in 1987, and in 2014, Spirit saw fit to say now is the right time. So if you're interested in the book, you can email me direct, or you can find the book on Amazon. It's called Summerland, so it's spelled as you hear it, SUMMERLAND. So if you're interested in that, then do request. We've got a question from Mary Poppins 2. I'm not quite sure what she's meaning. It's directed for Emma. It's called, says, Emma, what do you think about genetic blueprinting? I've got to say I'm not entirely sure what she's on about. So if you might want to expand, Mary, that'd be great. But what do you think, Emma?
Okay. Well, first of all, I love the name, Mary Poppins 2. Congratulations on that. And about genetic blueprinting, when I saw your question, I thought, oh, right. Let's see. I wonder what she means. And then I'll give it my best shot here, because I'm not exactly sure what you mean. But certainly in the mental health field, there are a lot of people right now, psychiatrists in particular, who are saying, okay, so we didn't quite see it accurately when we started recognizing that the neurotransmitters were not acting properly. So therefore, we needed to make some changes chemically with serotonin and other brain chemicals. And there must be something else that is the origin point of mental illness. So let's look at the gene pool and exactly what kind of genes each person is getting from their families of origin, their blood families, and maybe what we'll find there is the roots of mental illness. So I've been thinking about this. And my thought actually moves in the direction of epigenetics. So some of the people who are creating what's called informally the new biology are really interested in epigenetics. And what that means is really going beyond or going to a higher level than genetics. And so one of the people who I think is a fabulous spokesperson for this is a chiropractor by the name of Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he wrote a book called You Are the Placebo. And he wrote that in 2014. And he tells this amazing story of being a triathlon athlete. And as a chiropractor, he did his best to keep himself in shape. And as a triathlon athlete, he must have been in shape. And he was riding a bicycle up a hill in the midst of a race. And what he didn't see is that a truck was coming towards him. And unfortunately, there was an accident in which he was thrown under a truck. And several of his vertebrae were fractured and his body was in terrible shape. So they took him immediately to the hospital, and he was told by the doctors that he had to have surgery immediately or he'd likely be a paraplegic for the rest of his life. And what Dr. Dispenza said to himself was, well, wait a minute. I'd rather use mind over matter and cure myself. So he wanted to be taken home. He was taken home. And he did certain meditations every day for several months. And he was completely healed and back at work as a chiropractor after 3 months. Wow. So it's an extraordinary story. And he calls his book You Are the Placebo because we know that a placebo can be given to someone, especially this is done in research around giving certain psychiatric medications to some people, but giving a sugar pill to others. And the people who are getting the sugar pill are led to believe that they're taking a medicine, or they're at least not told that they're being given a placebo, meaning a sugar pill, which doesn't have any kind of medicinal value. But those people who think they're being given medicine may heal as much as or faster than the people who are actually given a psychiatric medication. So clearly, our mind and our belief that something is going to help us is extremely important, maybe even more important than the medical intervention we have. And Dr. Dispenza embroiders on this in his story because he's doing meditations that actually are healing, and he believes that they're healing, and he believes that he can actually manifest healing in his own body that will have more potency than physical surgery from a surgeon. So, and now he's teaching all over the world about his techniques. So he's not the only person who has this particular theme, but he's certainly a very powerful spokesman for it because of his own personal experience. So what I think about genetic blueprinting is that it is one way of determining some of our weaknesses. And I personally went to someone who could do some of this genetic testing almost 2 years ago now. And the blood analysis showed that I had a certain genetic anomaly that came from both my mother and father. And as a result, I was put on some vitamin B12 and some other natural supplements. And I found that to be extremely helpful in terms of stabilizing my energy and giving me more energy. So that was extremely useful for me. But I also follow Dr. Joe Dispenza and what he believes and what he has put forth through his story as well as through his writings. And so I also do a lot of practicing of those kinds of theories, which would have us be, for instance, thinking very positively, amongst other things. So I think both are very valuable, both being very cognizant of our genetic blueprinting and using epigenetic formulae like I did, using natural supplements so that the genetic blueprinting does not create destiny in our lives. In other words, we can move beyond through the use of natural supplements. And I also believe that the epigenetic mind over matter is extremely powerful. So I hope that answers your question. I'm sorry if I gave you more information than you wanted.
That's a great explanation. I know scientists have estimated that the world's greatest genius, Leonardo da Vinci, used about 10% of his brain. So there's 90% of it left that we really don't know what it does, to be honest with you. But I've seen programs where people have been taught to numb a leg, and that was for the purpose of surgery. So he told he practiced and told his leg that he could feel no pain. They did open surgery on it, fixed the knee, and he physically got off the table and walked away. So the mind is a very, very, very powerful thing. Mary Poppins has said, I've had this done on a retreat. It tells you about the chakras. So I think, Mary, that it's something slightly different to what we've been talking about. But I know that there are all different types of surgeons. I've got a friend that I'll invite, and she's an excellent trance medium. And so much so that she can physically walk about. Her guide is called Master Chow. We'll get her on the show at some point. And he does trance healing as well. There are mediums that can work inside and outside of the body, doing psychic surgery. And I was very impressed many years ago. It was a black and white film. It was a gentleman in Russia. And there was a gentleman in front of him stripped to the waist, and the trance medium flicked a finger, and there was a little point of blood, and he moved his hand downwards, and it physically opened the gentleman up. So there's a lot of psychic surgery that's fake, but there's an awful lot that goes on that we're not opening our minds to. I manifest an awful lot, and we can create anything that we need, which includes good health. So hopefully that's answered, as well as Emma's excellent explanation. the way that what you might have experienced on that retreat. Ellie B was asking about automatic drawing and painting, if that's something I do. It depends on the guide that's come through, but I've never drawn, I've never painted. For some reason, that's not for me. But if you want to see somebody that's absolutely amazing, there's a gentleman, again in Brazil, it seems to be a focus, called Chico Xavier. So that's CHICO Xavier, and this gentleman is amazing. He's been doing it from, I think, about 9 years old, and it is true trance mediumship. And I've seen film of him with a paintbrush in each hand, a paintbrush being held by each foot, and he channels masters. So, and the pictures are done extremely quickly, 30 seconds a minute, and he will do Da Vinci, Picasso, 4 paintings going on in 30 seconds or a minute, which can be identified as the brush strokes and etc. that masters will print. So myself, no, I'm not blessed in that way. But Chico Xavier is certainly a gentleman that would do it, and you can find him on YouTube if you just Google him. So there are many types of mediumship, and it's something that will be discussed as the shows go on. But myself, automatic drawing and painting, no. So hopefully that answers that for you.
Leo, can I insert something here?
Absolutely.
Okay. I loved your description of the automatic drawing and painting, and I've witnessed it myself in Brazil. Not that I've done it myself, but I've witnessed several other people who are gifted in automatic drawing and painting. And what you described is absolutely accurate. What I did want to say is that Chico Xavier does not do automatic drawing and painting, but he did automatic writing, and he wrote over 400 books through automatic writing. And he was so good at it that he could sit down and write out a whole book, and nothing needed to be edited. And he, as you rightly said, he discovered his talent at a very early age. He's passed away now, but he was gifted as a medical intuitive as well as a medium, a fantastic medium in terms of connecting with those people who have passed on, who are there to help those of us who are still in body. So he had many followers, but his books are absolutely extraordinary because he wrote them without any need for editing. And all of the books that he wrote, he actually gave away. So millions and millions and millions of copies of his books have been given away, and the money has all gone to support charities in Brazil. So he's considered a saint in Brazil, and I can well understand why, because he had a good sense of humor, but he was a humble man, and very deeply in service to other people, and much loved because of that.
Thank you for correcting me. That's wonderful. I'm still trying to think of the name. I've tried Googling it while we're here, and to no success. But yes, there was this gentleman that, again, Brazilian, that could literally paint 4 masterpieces with each foot, with each limb at the same time. Fantastic. Okay, now. Are there any courses or books or anything that you want to promote while you have the chance, Emma?
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, one of my weak points is promotion. So
Me too, funnily enough.
The opportunity. I'll tell you, I'm doing my very best to also be in service, and I consider that a lot of people who are being diagnosed now with mental illness actually are mediums in the rough, or they are people who are visionaries, or people who are extremely gifted but haven't yet been able to harness those gifts for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So a lot of the courses that we give through imhu.org, that's Integrative Mental Health for You, or imhu.org, a lot of those courses are about phenomena that are connected to the spiritual awakening process. So there's a course on intuition and working with subtle energies. There's a course on what Vedic astrology has to tell us about spiritual emergency. There's a course that I'm involved with right now, which is a conversation on being an empath and 12 strategies to help us be successful as empaths. In other words, not become saturated with other people's energies or become immersed in the difficulties of being an empath.
Yeah.
And but one of the main things that people come to us about, I think, is to be trained and to become more knowledgeable about how to support people in spiritual emergency. And another thing that people come to us for, because we're unique in the world, is that I personally take a small group of healthcare providers to Brazil to not only witness, but also experience the Spiritist treatment there. And I do this once a year. It's a 7-day seminar that happens in Brazil. And we stay in a nice hotel, and we have classes each day where people can really learn about this whole paradigm of care, which is very sensitive to acknowledge when people are going through a spiritual awakening process, what kind of training they need to harness their abilities as sensitives. And they're also getting energy work when they need it. They're also have access to mediums, intuitive medical intuition that can tell them what the roots of their issues are and help them to move through it as quickly as possible. So this is a real eye-opener for a lot of healthcare providers to see this paradigm in action and actually to experience also the energy work and the disobsession work. And they come home really mobilized to wanting to create change in their own communities.
Oh, that's fantastic. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's all right. What did you want to say?
I've got a friend called Marion Dampagine, Swedish medium. And in Sweden, they're actually very advanced as well in this kind of thing. And in hospitals, they have people, mediums, that are called blood stoppers. And they are available if surgery goes wrong or if there's a burst and it's, for example, they're working on the heart, something goes in the head. And they bring these blood stoppers in and they stop the leak.
Really?
Without the surgery. Yeah. So we're going to have Marion Dampagine's on. In fact, Emma, remind me and I'll give you a link to her because she's absolutely fascinating. Very good medium herself. But there's a lot going on in Sweden that seems to be cocooned for some reason. Yes. So that's I think that again that's something for you to look at. She's a fascinating lady too, so we'll have her on at some point. Okay, so we've got a couple of minutes of the show left. Before we run out of time, I'd like to thank you, Emma. It's been absolutely brilliant to speak to you and to hear your opinions and of your work. I think it's very, very valuable. And, you know, at some point the world, well, it is waking up, but at some point the world will go, that's the way to go. Let's do this a different way.
All right. Thank you so much, Leah. Well, it's been a pleasure to be speaking with you, for one, and also on your radio show. And I hope that our conversation has been of value to the people who are listening.
I'm sure it has. And again, you know, as we become more aware of these things, then the knowledge spreads. So if you want to get in touch with Emma, it's emmabragdon.com. You can just dial her, have a look at what the IMHU is doing, inform yourselves, protect yourselves. So that's fantastic. So Once again, thank you so much. The show's come to an end. Do get in touch with Emma, and once again, Emma, thank you so much. It's a privilege.
Well, you're certainly welcome. It's been a privilege to be with you, Leo.
Bless you.
You've been listening to Leo Bonomo, the host of The Voice of Spirit. Live every Thursday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, guests, and host of The Voice of Spirit, or to book a private reading, please visit leo-bonomo.com. That's leo-bonomo.com. Your connection to the other side is just a phone call away. The Voice of Spirit.
It is amazing, is it not?
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Now for the news.